All right, good afternoon, everyone. Okay, so let me introduce you to two wonderful chefs, the Verkade family. Okay, so on my left here, I do have Shauna Verkade. Shauna is president and CEO of Excaliber Food Dehydrators. She has been involved in the business since she was young, yes, please, and along with her husband Whitney, purchased the company after her father retired in 2004. She received her master's degrees in business from the University of San Francisco and her culinary training from Living Light Culinary Art Institute. Yay! She is dedicated to providing environmentally conscious products and furthering to science of dehydration. Stephanie on my right, Stephanie Rea, aka Chef Steph, is the resident chef at Excaliber Dehydrators. For over 10 years, she has tested and developed thousands of dehydrated recipes that have been featured in many books, magazines, and articles. Not only is she an expert in dehydration, she is a raw food chef who graduated from Living Light Culinary Art Institute. Her passion lies in creating healthy, kid-friendly recipes and educating families on how to live a healthy lifestyle. So please welcome the chefs Verkade.
Thank you. We always love to come back here to Living Light since the intro did tell that we both graduated here. It's kind of like coming home. We really have a special place in our heart for Living Light. And if you haven't had an opportunity to actually come here to school or do a class, we highly recommend it because it's so much great knowledge and you meet so many good people. Today what we're going to do is kind of a basic overview of dehydration, since that's kind of our expertise. We have put together some quick kind of recipes and tips for you. Normally in the beginning, a lot of people are kind of intimidated by a dehydrator because maybe it's an appliance they haven't had in their kitchen before, haven't seen. So we want to kind of dispel some of that and help you just dive in and see how easy it is. And if you've been using a dehydrator for a while, I'll give you maybe some tips and tricks that we have. So again, we're going to do some recipes and some how-to.
So thank you. How's everybody enjoying themselves? Good. As Shauna said, it's always nice to come back. We actually did all of our training in this classroom right here, so it's nice to actually be in here teaching now. What we're going to do, like she had mentioned earlier, is to kind of tell you what things we use our dehydrator for, what you can use with it, and just some of the things that we use it for in our family. I'm just going to kind of run down because there's so many things you can do. We do flaxseed crackers in there. We do sprouted grain breads. We also use it to speed up the marinating process, maybe if you're doing mushrooms. We use the dehydrator to warm up soups and maybe your sauces to condense them. Like for instance, we do an Alfredo sauce and maybe I don't want it as thin. So what I do is I take out all the trays, put it just in a mason jar and put it in the dehydrator and it kind of condenses down and thickens up as well. I also use it for doing easy travel things like fruit leathers or things that the kids might enjoy. We make veggie burgers in there, pizza crust, tostada shells, taco shells. You can do easy crepes, which is just pureeing up some maybe coconut meat with a little bit of coconut water and make them into like a coconut wrap, which is really great. And also, when your coconut oil gets solid, you can also lightly and gently make it softer in there. If you're using cacao butter, which is really solid, you can slowly and gently dehydrate it to soften it in the dehydrator. And what we're going to do today is just show you a quick basic and easy flaxseed cracker recipe. You can keep them plain and you don't really have to add anything to it if you just want that flax taste. So as the handout, as Cassie handed out, was the recipe. If you want to turn to that, that's fine. The basic flaxseed recipe, you can do 2 cups of soaked flax. You'll want to do double the water. So for instance, if you're doing 1 cup flax, you soak it with 2 cups of water for approximately 8 to 12 hours. What I like to do is I kind of start it once the kids go to sleep at night. I soak all my flax, and usually it's ready by the morning, and I could start my flaxseed recipe, put it in, and then it's ready to flip over by the time I get home from work. So what we're going to do today is just do a quick and easy Italian style recipe, and what you can do is kind of just change it up according to how you like it. If you want a sweet type of flaxseed cracker, go ahead and just put some dried fruit in there. You can put soaked raisins or dates as a sweetener, a little bit of agave, maybe some bananas, and whatever is your fancy, to tell you the truth. It's very easy. You just kind of go off the base recipe and then add the stuff that you like. If you don't like a certain herb, let's say, for instance, these Italian crackers, you want to kind of, switch it up a little bit. We're using basil and Italian parsley. You can also do more bell peppers and less tomato and kind of substitute it for cilantro. And just put some maybe cayenne seeds, cayenne pepper in there, or maybe some chili seeds to kind of, heat it up a little bit if you want that. So today, what I'm first going to do is actually, this is tomato powder that I've made in the dehydrator. You just basically slice up the tomatoes really thin, dehydrate it until it's brittle, and then what you'll want to do is powder it down in a Vitamix. Or if you're doing smaller quantities, you can also use a coffee grinder. I mean, they're very inexpensive, and you can do that. So we're going to rehydrate that, 3/4 cup to 1/2 cup of water. And if you notice with the rehydration process, it just rehydrates back into a tomato paste. Now, there's many ways to use this. Actually, we use this tomato paste as maybe a topping for pizza crust. So kind of like a pizza sauce would be. You can use that. And then what we're going to do is just pulse up a few items in the food processor. We have a cup of red and yellow bell pepper. We have a 1/4 cup of red onion. Again, if you want to mellow out the taste, you can use shallots if you want. We've also used white onion. A tablespoon of lemon juice. It's about 1/2 lemon. 1½ teaspoon of Himalayan sea salt. 1 teaspoon garlic. And actually, I mince up the garlic because we're going to just pulse this until it's a chunky consistency. What we don't want is just to throw the whole garlic, clove in there, and then you have big pieces of garlic. That wouldn't taste too good. And then about a tablespoon of Italian seasoning. And then also for the herbs, we have 1/2 cup. You can mix it with any herbs that you want. I just put, parsley and basil. And again, you'll want to mince those up pretty good because, again, we're just going to pulse them until it's a little bit chunky consistency, not minced. So you don't want to just throw it in there if you're not going to puree it up because it's just going to be big, pieces of herbs, and you won't want to do that. So we'll just lightly pulse that up. And it's really easy. I mean, just kind of put down the sides in the food processor. I'm used to working with a big food processor about this size, so a big RoboCoupe it's called. And then after my flaxseed, of course, has been soaking, what we're going to do is just add the pulse vegetables into a large bowl. We're going to add the tomato paste. The tomato paste, you just slice the tomatoes really thin. You don't want to put anything on them. Just dehydrate them until they're really brittle, really crispy. And then you'll powder them up in either a coffee grinder or your Vitamix if you have quite a bit. And keep in mind, a lot of tomatoes will just do a little, a little bit. I mean, it's about a gallon Ziploc bag will be about a cup of tomato powder. So,
and a little later on, we'll demo doing the powders. I have some dried tomatoes right here that we actually did. It's in the vacuum seal jar.
Actually, your fresh tomatoes, you're going to have that more fresh flavor, very watery. When you dehydrate, it condenses down the sugars, it condenses down the flavor, so you actually take on more of a cooked flavor. I also add the, because one thing you don't want, like if I'm making a marinara for some pasta, is it to taste like a salsa is on my zucchini. You know, add a little bit of the tomato powder to that, and that's going to thicken it up. It's going to absorb a little bit of the moisture that's still left in those chopped tomatoes. And it's also going to take on a cooked flavor, and it's going to be a thickening type of agent, too. So, of course, I've combined the chopped vegetables along with the tomato paste. And then with this recipe, of course, I use 2 cups of flaxseed, soaked flaxseed, to 4 cups of water. And I soak those actually I soak these for about 12 hours. 8 hours is fine. No, you definitely don't want to rinse them. That's actually good for your digestive system, is that gluten, because it pulls and attaches to, you know, the bad stuff in there and helps you eliminate them a little bit faster. So what I do, I'm going to mix it up. And then what I'm going to do, if you notice it's kind of still runny, I'm going to add a little bit of flax meal, because that's going to soak up the water. It's also going to kind of bind the recipe together, and I have 2 cups of flax meal. And again, if you want to use a darker flaxseed, definitely do that. My kids like, because of course flax is a really dominant taste. If you don't like that, you can substitute, add a little bit of sunflower seeds in there. That mellows it out quite a bit. If you don't like bell peppers, go ahead and just put zucchini. You know, and there's some variations in there too. And the sweet that my kids like is actually to use pineapple, mango, coconut, vanilla, and they use that with, you know, some cashew cheese sweetened up with a little bit of agave.
Do you make your own flax powder too?
Yeah. Actually, you want to do it like right before, because the longer, let's just say, you've ground it up, it starts losing its nutrient value very fast when you grind it up, and you want that high omega-3 and all that stuff in there. So if you notice, it is really thickened up by adding that meal. And what you'll want to do is line the dehydrator tray with a Paraflex Premium sheet, which is a nonstick sheet. Each tray I do about 2, usually about 2 heaping cups of mixture. And then just kind of, you know, put it on the tray and dehydrate that. It's going to take you a little bit over a day. What I do is initially do it at a higher temperature, because it has a high wet state. What I don't want to do is spoil it. So actually, Shauna can tell you a little bit about that if you like.
I guess Stephanie can spread all these, so she'll spread them out on the tray. And while she's doing that, I'll talk to you about one of the big questions we get all the time at Excaliber is, you know, at what temperature do I dry something, and for how long? A lot of times, you know, people, you know, really worry over, you know, that temperature. So one thing that it's important to kind of get a concept is that your air temperature is not the same as your food temperature. And a lot of times people think, oh my gosh, I have to put it at the 105, 110, 150, you know, right around there, so it's not going to go over that enzyming deactivating state of like 118. The thing to remember, again, is on your dial, that's your air temperature. You are concerned with actually the internal temperature of your food. So especially when you're taking something out in the refrigerator and you're putting it in, or something like a flax cracker where we've added a lot of moisture, it's in a really moist, wet state. So in the beginning, it's going to take a long time for that moist product to actually get up to even the temperature, your air temperature, because through evaporation, you're actually cooling the box, you know, so you may turn on to, you know, 130, but the air in the box may only be 100 because of the evaporation effects on the food. Does that make sense? You know, you have the, you know, the air, you got moist air evaporating out. So what you don't want to do is actually turn it down really low when you have something very, very wet and high in the beginning, because that's a perfect incubator for mold and bacteria and for long, long periods of time. So what we recommend and what we always use in our test kitchen is we will actually put it up at the higher temperature, say 145, 135 for the first few hours. So as that evaporation's happening, your food is still cool. It's not going to reach over, your 118, but it's going to get a lot of that moisture out of the food in the beginning, so you're not kind of making an incubator for bacteria. And then we turn it down. And I put, just so you had for reference later on, part in our Preserve It Naturally book that I wrote. And what I did was, it has an actual illustrated example, is in our test kitchen, we're fortunate as we got all these great computers with probes and everything else, so I can monitor all that stuff. And what I did was I just did a simple experiment with apples that I have illustrated on here. So I cut apples 1/4 of an inch thick. I placed one of our probes actually in the apple itself, and then in the middle of the dehydrator, so it's going to give me the air temperature. So that's what's in the graph. So you can actually see really what was going on. So the black line is my air temperature. So see, at first I put it at 145 for 2 hours, and then I dropped it down. So that's actually the temperature on the dial. And then the blue is actually the air temperature, what was happening in there. So you can see when you first turned it on, see how it's still taking, hours to even get up there because you had that cooling effect on the food. And then the red was the actual temperature of the apple. Now look, even through the whole drying process, how low, that was. So that's just kind of just showing you, never even reached even the hundreds. So you don't have to worry about in the beginning, kind of turning that up, and that will help save so you don't spoil your stuff. Yeah, it's an important thing because, years and years ago we had people, like I said, they're nervous about that temperature, which I fully understand. So they're like, oh, I do, for 105 for, 30 hours or something, and I'm having a problem, it's spoiling or it's doing. So especially if you're in a really humid environment also, because you already have a lot of moisture in the air. So we have people from Florida or in the Caribbean, it's going to take your actual recipe, if you're in a really humid part of the country, is going to take longer than, say, if you're in Arizona where it's drier. You can take the exact same recipe. So that's just kind of something so you actually, like I said, see the results, that you won't have any issues with that. So. No, because it's specially designed so that the whole chamber is even throughout.
And the thermostat regulates the heat and the moisture level inside of the dehydrator. So of course it'll turn the thermostat and the heating element on when you have when it senses, oh, I have a lot of moisture in here, I need to get that dehydrated and evaporated. And that's a lot of questions people had was, why is it taking so long? Or maybe my flaxseed crackers taste a little sour. What happened? Well, that's why, because they started and stopped at that 85-degree temperature, which is a perfect incubation temp that you don't want. That defeats our whole purpose in raw foods, right? Yeah, 85.
Well, just doing something at really low for long periods, like I said. One other things that also will determine how long something's going to take to dry, and it's important, is obviously how thick you actually cut it. The thicker something is, it's going to take longer. The more moisture you have in something, like I was saying, the flax, we added water, or if you're adding, you're doing tomatoes, they're really juicy, that's going to take a little longer. And then again, how humid it is outside. So you could have the same recipe again, that it's really raining, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, it took an extra hour or something. You can't really mess it up. You're not going to hurt it if you keep on drying. You're not going to do, anything to your food if it gets a little drier. So it's okay. You kind of experiment with it a little, and I think you'll find, if you find something that you really like, just jot it down so you know for next time. Yes, actually you can. Some things are about almost 4. What we do is when you look at it and you pull it out and you start looking and you see that moisture is kind of starting to get out, it's drying, then you can turn it down. But if you still open it at 4 hours and it's still really wet and moist, then it's fine because it's still going to stay, it's not getting, you can even feel it that it's not really warm, you know, so. She's asking if the layer on the top can get more affected by like the interior. What actually it does when you have a good dehydrator, which Excaliber is, obviously, you have a technology which helps when it cycles on and off the thermostat, is that it pulls that moisture from the inside and then out. Kind of like it actually causes the food to sweat, if you want to say. And then it evaporates that moisture off. So if you do have a good dehydrator, that will happen. Sometimes if you have something that's maybe a constant temperature, people try to do things in the oven. You know, there's all different things. But if it's not doing that, it's not going to cause to pull that moisture out of the food out of the center. And you can get something which is called case hardening, where the outside hardens and the inside is still moist. So that's... I think we'll try to get, I know there are probably a lot of questions, so we'll try to get through this and then maybe answer some of the questions at the end, so that way we at least get through that.
That'd be fine.
Let's see.
So what I'm going to do is actually show you a quick way. One thing is when your crackers are dehydrated halfway, you have to flip them over and take off the nonstick sheet so the underside can start getting dry. So one quick and easy way to do that is if you have an extra tray and screen. Let's say my crackers are on this nonstick sheet right here. What I do is I take the extra screen, put it on top of the cracker, put the tray upside down, and then just kind of do a flip. I call it the Paraflex flip because, you're flipping the Paraflex, okay? And then you'll take off the nonstick, yeah. And then that way it'll be on this, and then you just kind of continue it. Because one thing is you don't want is if it's a little bit brittle is to start cracking the whole surface, you know. You want to kind of keep everything scored how you had it originally.
Now, some people score their crackers right in the beginning, and some at the halfway point will start to score it too. It's really up to you. Or you can just do it in one flat sheet and crack,
just kind of crack it off. Right.
Okay, the next thing we want to kind of go on is some travel ideas and actually snack ideas, because the dehydrator is great for the fact that you can make a whole bunch of dehydrated snacks and put it in your pantry, because if you dehydrate it right and store it correctly, it'll be there for you weeks, later on down the road. So what I try to do is say on the weekend, maybe fill the whole thing up so that I don't have to maybe do some seasoned nuts and seeds or crackers later on. They'll already be there in your pantry for you. So some of the things that we do, obviously, because we travel a lot, is we can do, you can soak some nuts, almonds, and then add some agave, or I like to do that, agave, some other seasonings, and then you can dry them back to be crispy just like you would have, but you were able to soak them and get that enzyme inhibitor off, and that's
start
great.
Sprouting them.
Yeah, kind of mini sprout, And then, did you want to talk about some of the
some of the things I actually bring traveling is granola, because that's versatile. You can kind of eat it as is. You, of course, do it in your dehydrator. But also, you can whip up. I have a little mini blender that we bring with us, and we just whip up some nut milk real quick, and you can have that in the, for breakfast in the morning. Definitely fruit leathers, the seasoned nuts and seeds, as Shauna was talking about. Oh, and also veggie chips. We love to do that. So zucchini, and my kids really love the sweet potato. Just dehydrate them really thin. Again, dehydrate them until they're brittle. Add a little bit of onion, salt. Shallot salt is really, really good because that gives it a mild and a sweet flavor. You can add different herbs and just pulse them up. And again, that coffee grinder is great for doing small things and small herbs or garlic. Also, what's great is if you're on the airplane a lot is to make your green smoothies ahead of time. Because one thing is you can't do is bring liquids through security. So what I do is I whip up the green smoothies beforehand and dehydrate them on these nonstick trays into a vegetable leather. And then when you're on the plane, just ask the stewardess for a little bit of, the hot water, let it cool down a little bit, and then add your fruit leather in there. And then it just rehydrates back. You can do that with your fruit puree or a vegetable green smoothie, or just kind of eat your smoothies as is. It's great to bring to work, jury duty. Actually, I had jury duty not too long ago. I'm thinking, what am I going to bring? I'm not going to, have access to different stuff that I want to eat. So I just kind of brought my cooler, brought my smoothies, my fruit leathers, and things like that. So that was really good.
So what we're going to do is we actually have a quick, simple demo of a nice travel snack that everyone seems to love.
And actually, this is one of my kids' favorite thing to do, because one thing, it's hard to get kids to eat, especially if you tell them it's healthy for them. But if you get them involved and kind of in the process of making the food, they usually eat it a lot more. So one thing we always have on hand is dehydrated apples. You can keep those a little bit pliable if you'd like to do that. You can slice them a little bit thinner and make them like a crispy apple chip, which, I mean, the whole family loves, and the kids definitely love to do that. So what we have at Excaliber is this actual apple peeler and core. It peels, cores, and slices your apples at the same time. If for some reason you want to keep the skin on them, there's a little kickstand right here that you can pull back and make it to where it doesn't, skin the apple. And then what we do is just, again, in the wonderful coffee grinder, I put a little bit of cane sugar and cinnamon together, and then just, lightly sprinkle it on top. Now, of course, to tell you the truth, I don't have my knife.
Okay, nice. What's nice about the apples is that like I said, if you get the kids involved doing it, you can just do it plain as is, or you can, like we're doing a demonstration, just showing you the some apples with some cinnamon and cane sugar. And Cassie's actually passing out samples of the apples, and she also has samples of the flaxseed that we made, crackers, so you'll have those. So you just basically slice it, then you can just sprinkle right on it we do like I said, the cinnamon sugar.
What kid wouldn't love to do this? They just sit there. My 8-year-old does that, and my little 3-year-old just shakes the cinnamon
so you
sugar.
can do it. We're doing half with the skin and without the skin. So in the sample, we actually have ones with the skin and without. We did a green apple because I like the green, like a really tart Granny Smith with the actual cinnamon and a little cane sugar, because it kind of has that sweet, kind of almost like an apple pie taste. And it smells wonderful. It's like aromatherapy in the house, because you put it in. When we were doing the samples for this in our test kitchen at work, I had a lot of the guys in the production, because they could smell it coming. They're going, "What are you making in there?" Because they know they always come and get all this stuff, we have for them. So they're like, "Oh, what are you doing today?" They kind of buzz around. It's kind of funny.
And don't dare do pineapple in our test kitchen. It never makes it out of the dehydrator.
Yeah, everyone goes in and it's gone. So
I say, I'm making it at home. Keep your fingers out of it, But the guys will come in and they're just peeking and taking.
So, you can do a lot of things and have them stocked and ready to go, and then that way you're not going to grab for that unhealthy snack because you have the stuff already ready for you.
Right.
There's just a lot of things. Again, like I said, you've got to kind of experiment with it. The big question is, and something we can talk about, is pre-treatment. I don't know if you guys have heard or talked about actually doing any pre-treatments when you dehydrate. What that is if you cut something and it starts to brown, like the apples are already, this one's already starting to oxidize a little. You see how it's also already starting to go a little brown? You know when you're cutting a banana, an apple. You can choose to pre-treat them or not. If you do pre-treat them, that will help save the color and give it a more bright color. It won't brown. If you're doing things specially like potatoes, those go black if you dehydrate them, if you don't pre-treat them. So pre-treating there's several different things you can do. You can use a chemical which is called sodium bisulfite, which is actually a form of sulfur, and that's what everything in your stores are. You see the apricots, they're nice bright orange and stuff like that. That's because they sulfur them ahead of time. We don't really use that because we don't want to add more chemicals. And also, if you have someone in the family who has say a sulfur allergy, that's not a good thing. That may be why when they eat some of that stuff, they may have a headache or something. It's because it's actually full of sulfur.
It's a chemical.
Yeah.
And that defeats what we're trying to do. Is
So
we're trying to get that out of our diet.
There's two other alternatives. One would be ascorbic acid, which basically that's just vitamin C. We sell like this. You can get it in the health food store, and it's just a powder. Really, all you would do is take a bowl, put some water in, and put like a teaspoon in it, and dissolve it. And then you would just take the apple when you dry it, stick it in the bowl of water, and then pull it out. I let it sit there for maybe a few minutes, nothing longer than that. While I'm doing the other apples, I sit it in there, and then I pull it out and put it on the tray. And that is your a pre-treatment. The other thing you can also use is like lemon juice or pineapple juice, anything that has a citric. The only thing to be aware of, obviously, with that is if you're doing something like you're going to do potatoes and cut them thin for potato chips or something, you may not want pineapple juice and things like that on it. You may. It might be a great, new
flavor
snack,
combination.
Flavor.
Yeah.
But, maybe in that you might want to use the ascorbic acid, which is, like I said, it's just 100% vitamin C. And you soak it in that. So.
Can you use apple cider vinegar?
Actually, potatoes, I like apple cider vinegar and sea salt.
Yeah,
they taste like those salt and vinegar chips.
Yeah.
But that's going to give more of a pungent flavor. Yeah.
Yeah, so just be aware, obviously, if you're putting something on it, it might change your flavor, but it might be a really good flavor. Now, we, a lot of times, like I said, I don't pre-treat it because I don't care. But if you're giving it gifts or you're having friends come over, everyone eats with their eyes. So you don't want to say, look at wonderful, healthy, and it's, kind of brown, and people are like, oh, great, thanks. So it's just sometimes there might be, an opportunity or a reason to do that. So we do the pre-treatments. And then, so next what we'll do is, since we talked about the powdering, we'll kind of do a quick demo with that. Like we said, if you want, you can powder down almost anything. Lemons, limes, vegetables. So like I showed you here, we just sliced 1/4 of an inch tomatoes, and this is what they're, I dried them so they're really dry. See how, brittle and crumbly they are. You just let it, go until they're like just bone dry. And then you can powder those down. Like Steph was saying before, you can put it all into like a big blender, or if you're doing little, or you have herbs that you want, if you dry herbs and then you want to powder them or get them more fine, you can use, we just use a little teeny coffee grinder. It's real simple. So I just take the ones that I did and I just kind of break it up so it's just a little easier to get, since I'm using the coffee grinder. If I was using a blender, I could just, dump the whole thing in.
And it's really simple. I mean, I use, lemons if you want to put them on the bottom of maybe a teacup, and when you're doing your teas and things like that, it'll rehydrate back into the lemon. Also, we use the lemon and maybe to make like a lemon cheesecake, or maybe add the powder to cookies to kind of make a lemon cashew cookie. You can also use it for so many things. It's amazing. The oranges are really good. I eat them just dried.
So
oh yeah, they're really good.
I'm going to pulse this just because it might get a little loud.
Pardon me? Yeah. I've only actually used potatoes, but it will core out the center of the potatoes. I use it just for apples, usually, yeah.
I'm just going to...
Pears, no. No.
So
pears
see how
are so
it's just
easy.
a powder. It's really, really simple. The thing is, obviously, cut it thin, and that you want to dry it really dry. And you can, like I said, powder anything. And this is actually kind of like we were saying, one of our tips or tricks, because a lot of people don't realize you can do things like this. You can powder down vegetables. You can add things to your smoothies to kind of give them a more kick. You can put them in some of your sprouted breads, and it adds a completely different flavor. So you could, like I said, it could be your secret recipe that people don't know what you're doing. But like the lemon and lime, I like to do that and put that in addition with my smoothies because then it gives a little more, different flavor. The tomatoes, which is wonderful because you can get, have tons of tomatoes coming out of your garden, and what am I going to do with it? You can slice them all. You can either powder it down like this and store it in the powder, which you're going to help on saving your storage. Store them in already sliced like this, and then when you're ready, to use it, you can do that.
And also rehydrating is really easy that a lot of people don't know. Anything that's been dehydrated, you can rehydrate, which means you're just basically topping it off with a little bit of water, and it just plumps back up. Like the lemons, if for some reason you're out of fresh lemons, just put a little bit of warm water over that, let it sit, and then it'll be back into a fresh lemon. Also, usually same flavor. Yeah. So rehydrating tomatoes, if you want to add a little bit of soaked, tomatoes to your flaxseed cracker recipe or your breads. And like Shauna was saying, I mean, this is probably like a half a gallon Ziploc bag of the powder.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but a little bit goes a long way as well.
When I did this, I think it was about 7 big, like, beefsteak tomatoes was this. So, we always have the abundance if you're growing. You always have tons of tomatoes. And what do I do with all this stuff? Well, it's really easy because once you have it in the powder, too, you can add a little bit of water and you get the tomato paste like you saw. You add a little more water and you can have it a little runnier to do like, a pizza sauce, marinara for your zucchini noodles. A lot of water and it's tomato juice. And this is fresh, right from your garden, or go to a farmer's market, buy in bulk. And then you have this all year round. You can put it in, kind of make a soup, as a soup starter with all your dehydrated, fruits, all your dehydrated vegetables. And then, you just put a little water, gently warm it up. You don't have to boil it really high. And you have that in times when you don't have maybe the fresh, produce.
Right.
You can buy in bulk. Like I said, we really support, going local and buying from your farmers markets and things like that if you're not, growing your own. So the next question or big thing that people like to talk is about storage of your dehydrated foods. What you see is what I have here that we use is it's a vacuum sealed container. And what happens is we fill it up and you can pump out the air. It actually seals it. This is also a kind of tinted a little because what you don't want to have is your stuff where light is going to hit it. Because when light hits it, it starts degrading your vitamin C especially. So we get all the air out, put these in, and we line them all in our cabinet. So that way, when you're ready, it just has this little release valve. You pull it out, then you take some out, and then you can pump it right back up. You can use vacuum seal bags, which helps vacuum out that. But, I'm always having to cut it open, reuse bags, and finally I'm like, okay, this is, for how much I use this stuff, it's not...
it's too much waste,
It's really not practical. Or, you may have something and it might poke the bag or something. Ziplocs you can use if you're going to use something in the next, week or two. But Ziplocs are permeable, so they will start sucking moisture from the outside. So especially if you live in a more humid environment, you could have your Ziploc bag, and after a few weeks, you go back in your pantry and you're like, wait, this molded or something. It's because it's actually absorbed the moisture out of the air. So that's also another thing that's important. If you're going to be doing anything, say like nuts or something that has oils in it, let's say you wanted to do a sun-dried tomato. Or you take the tomatoes, a lot of times we'll just slice them, put some olive oil and some seasoning on it and dry it like that so then it dries and it's really good. You're going to want to store that in the refrigerator because that oils will go rancid after a while. So you don't want to keep that in your pantry. So just store it. You can put it in mason jars. You want to try to get the air out because air and sunlight is what's going to have some issues. You can store dehydrated foods for years if you dry them really well. You don't want something that still has moisture. You want to kind of break it. Okay, do you see any drops of moisture in it? If you like things a little more chewy and you want to leave a little more moisture in it, that's fine, but you want to eat those, soon. But if you're going to do something for long-term storage, definitely make sure it's really dry and then that you get all the air out and kind of keep it out of the sunlight and you should be fine.
One of my last favorite things, actually, to do is, do you guys have these Pyrex dishes at home? Don't throw them away. I put our lasagna in here. I put marinated mushrooms, and these fit perfectly inside of the dehydrator. You can take out your trays, and if we want to warm up the lasagna, we just put it in. And that's great, again, if you're doing marinated mushrooms and you're doing a lot of those, if you want to heat up some soup or, your lasagna or pasta, maybe heat that up. But that's great. We use that all the time. That's like one of my favorite things.
Okay,
is the versatility.
Yeah, we have a few minutes left, so we wanted to kind of open it up to any, few questions.
We have about 4 minutes left.
Yeah, so we'll just start. Your hand went up.
Experimenting on making buns, like you're serving hamburgers and you want to kind of a thick bun.
She asked if we've done thick buns, like for,
yes.
So like a sprouted grain bread or something like that you could use for the...
Do you have a website or anything that's got recipes?
Yes, we have a website, and actually our contact information is on the recipe that we gave you. So Shauna and myself, our email's on there. So if you have any questions, email us, and we can go into further.
I tried to put fresh cranberries, dry them, and I had them in there about 3 days, and I never did.
Oh, that's a good one we want to talk about.
Yeah, one thing with cranberries, blueberries, grapes is you'll need to blanch them. Because one thing is it has an outer skin that's, it protects it against moisture. So what you want to do is you will want to bring up some hot boiling water. Keep in mind that the enzymes are not going to be hurt by this. The internal temperature is not going to reach it because it's a fast pre-treatment, which is about 30 seconds. You'll just want to dump them in the hot boiling water and then take them out and put them into ice cold water. Because what you're doing is you're basically making slight cracks in the skin of the cranberries, or like we're saying, raisins or blueberries. Is that way the air is able to penetrate inside of the cranberry or the grape that you're doing and actually able to evaporate it from the center. Go ahead. Thick but chewy. She was asking how to keep something chewy but chewier. Don't dehydrate it as long. Do that higher temperature initially and then lower it down and then just, not do it too long.
Then how do you store something like that?
Some things I keep in the refrigerator. If I know they're really thick and I know the inside might have more moisture in there, I definitely keep it in the refrigerator.
Something that's moist like that, what if you freeze it?
You can freeze it. It's not going to kill too much, but again, we eat it so much and so fast in our house because it's 2 hungry boys plus my husband and I, so we're kind of always replenishing what we're making, and my dehydrator's on like all the time. Go ahead in the back. You. Yes, I did. If you're just doing unflavored flaxseed crackers, do 2 cups soaked flax to 1 cup flax meal. If you're adding vegetables or, fruit to it, then add 1 additional cup equaling 2. Yes, you can do kale. If nothing's on it, then it will become really brittle, and it's not very good for storage because it'll just crunch down. You can make it into a powder. Oh, yes, you may. Yes, we do. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, these are really great. We love these. We have
they're a bit of investment.
50 or so.
Yeah, they're a bit of an investment in the beginning, but you use them over and over again, and they're wonderful. So,
go ahead. Actually, I bring our small 4 tray, which is a smaller size, 11-inch. It fits in the suitcase, yeah.
And if you did that, you already had the trays almost, so by the time you added up the trays, it's going to be almost pretty much the same size. So unfortunately, we ran out of time, but our contact information is on there. Feel free to email us, and we'll be happy to help you. Thank you. Yes,
Yeah,
we do. Stephanie does that.